Sorry, you have to.
All set?
Yes, sir. We're rolling.
So what's it like to tour on, we hope, the heels of a pandemic?
Well, it's a huge relief.
Yeah.
I mean, we were supposed to go out in July 2020, and now we've gone out in July 2022. So it was a long wait, but it feels great now. The pandemic thing is an interesting question, but probably not something that we really need to get into now.
Hold on.
A long conversation.
Do tell. Give me the short version.
Well, the motivations of the people who made the decisions about how to deal with the pandemic, particularly in the United States of America, were based on the thing that everything's based on, which is bottom line and profit and all of that, and not based upon the needs of the people. Which is why there's 1 million dead, and in China there's about half a dozen.
But we can never trust their numbers, right? I mean, we have no idea.
Oh, bollocks.
How many?
Don't give me the old Russian-Chinese propaganda nonsense.
You believe whatever the Chinese would tell you in terms of the death count?
I believe whatever people who are neutral will tell me about what's going. Where can you find news? And don't tell me you have proper news on CNN.
From me.
Okay.
Come on, I'm balanced.
Well, how would you know? Where do you get your information from?
Roger, I don't talk for a living. By the way, I've missed you. I can tell already. Holy crap. I read for a living. I don't talk for a living. All I do is consume news. And my whole mantra is you got to change the channel and mix up your news diet or you're not getting a straight story.
Well, good for you, and good luck with that theory. If you're going to spend all your time sitting around reading what comes out of Fox and the New York Times and the Washington Post and all that other crap that's out there in the mainstream, followed recently by Rolling Stone, who no longer want to cover proper stories. They won't speak to me.
Why not?
Oh, because they don't deal with legacy acts anymore, I'm told by some new bloke.
Wait, legacy acts that are putting 20,000 fannies in seats a night?
Yeah, those sort of legacy acts. No, they're not interested in it. Actually, I think it might have something more to do with my activism than my role in the music
Can we get to that?
Of course, why
All right.
not?
So here's the quote, as I understand, that begins the show. If you're one of those, I love Pink Floyd, but I can't stand Roger Waters' politics, you might do well to F off to the bar right now. At the outset of the show?
Yeah.
Because
it's a really good way to start the show. But apart from anything else, it sets a few things straight.
Namely?
Also it encourages a lot of the people who have come to the show, because they have listened to everything I've written since 1965 or whenever I started writing songs, so they do know what my politics are and they do understand where my heart is and they understand sort of why I'm there. But maybe it also gives a message to people who don't want to be there, in which case them effing off to the bar is probably not a bad idea. Except that you never know, those people, if they sit in a community like my audience is on these shows of This Is Not a Drill on this tour, there is such a great feeling of communication in that room between me and the audience and between us combined with all our brothers and sisters all over the rest of the world, irrespective of who they are, where they live, their ethnicity, their religion, their nationality, or anything else. Because if This Is Not a Drill has a message, it is that we have to communicate one with the other. And I'm not talking about Tucker Carlson. I have no interest in communicating with him. Or Rich Lombard, or he's dead now, so I can't. I think he's dead now. But I take your point about reading everything, but if I read everything and I read all that rubbish that they speak, I wouldn't have time to do anything else.
To the guy who says, shut the F up, play the hits. Do you want him, as long as he doesn't shout it out, do you want him in the arena?
I don't not want him there, so long as he doesn't annoy the people who do understand what's going on in the arena. I'm happy for him to
But I'm
be
saying, like, do I have to buy in? Does a person in the crowd have to buy in to the message? You know what I'm thinking of? You scolded me a couple of years ago because
Moi?
Yeah, because we were having this kind of a conversation.
Yeah.
There may have been a drink involved. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I raised a couple of political objections to you, and you said to me, "Hey, you haven't been paying attention." Because I'm the same guy with the same message I've always been.
Right. Okay. Well, and you didn't have a problem with that, did you?
Well, I've always loved the music.
Right.
Some of the messages I can buy into, and some I can't. Is this the freedom that comes with being?
I've only got one message. Two strangers passing in the street, by chance two passing glances meet, and I am you, and what I see is me. That is my message. And that was on Medal, which was in 1970. And basically, my message hasn't changed. I recognize your humanity, but I recognize all the Russians and the Chinese and the Ukrainians and the Yemenis and the Palestinians and the Germans and the French and the Spanish and the Ecuadorians and the Peruvians and the Colombians. Well done, by the way, Colombia. You've finally got a president who isn't in the pocket of United States of America businessmen, and maybe your people will start getting a fair shake. I love that. I think it's great. The inauguration, by the way, is on the 7th, which is in 2 days' time.
I thought the message was with, without, and who'll deny that's what the fighting's all about.
Well, that is part of the message, yeah, and thank you for remembering that lyric. And I still emphasize it in the middle of the song Us and Them. I would stop playing the bass at that point and gesticulate it, because it's something that I think we need to, I want to spread that message. That is what the fighting is all about. You know.
Is this the freedom that comes from being untethered to a band? You don't have to worry about the three others and whether they're going to buy into this and you're going to offend them. Roger can be Roger.
Of course, that's why I left in 1985. That's why I should really have. I'm glad I didn't, because we did some fantastic work together after 1973 when we made Dark Side of the Moon. We made Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall, and The Final Cut.
Right.
Well, Final Cut, not so much, but those three albums, however difficult it may have been, and however much we had diverged, and however much our motivation for staying under the Pink Floyd umbrella was to do with being frightened of not being under that umbrella. I don't know, but it is true that together, the four of us made some great records during that time.
How do you feel about audiences today? Of course, you know, you referenced The Wall. I remember the story of Montreal, how the genesis all began. It ended with some great music, but it began with a pretty twisted incident.
Well, it's that story is only about my desire to tell the truth, my truth, the truth about who I am, how I feel things need to be changed, why I quote Aldous Huxley, you know, and George Orwell in this show that I'm doing now, because their warnings in their great novels, Brave New World and 1984 and Animal Farm, warnings about the dystopian future were very real when they made them, 1929, 1948. Not to forget your ex-president, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who in his farewell address from the White House in 1960...
Military-industrial complex?
Yeah, you're ahead of me, obviously, because you read a bit.
That's exactly right, and you criticize me because I read too much, according to you. Are you an equal opportunity offender?
You're trying to have a fight.
Huh? No. I just enjoy the discourse with you.
Yeah, well, good, so do I,
okay.
Michael.
Are you an equal opportunity offender on this tour? Here's why I ask. I remember the last tour, of course I came and watched, very much, you know, about Trump. And in the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you, and a picture apparently of President Biden on the screen, and it says, "Just getting started." What's that all about?
President Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, or whatever his name is, the president, to negotiate and to explain why, when he stood on the platform of ratifying the Minsk agreements, which he did when he was elected by 73% of the Ukrainian population that was left able to vote. After that, somebody either whispered in his ear or he completely changed his mind about making peace in the Donbass and about solidifying the Minsk agreements and making peace with their Russian neighbors and obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing.
You're blaming.
We don't know how many Ukrainians.
But you're blaming the party
Russians
that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
That's you know, any war. When did it start? What you need to do is look at the history, and you can say, well, it started on this day. You could say it started in 2008. Okay, it's basic. This war is basically about the action and reaction of NATO pushing right up to the Russian border, which they promised they wouldn't do when Gorbachev negotiated the withdrawal of the USSR from the whole of Eastern Europe. He said, we will do this on one condition, that you don't come 1 inch closer to the Russian border than the eastern borders of Germany. And you lot, if I may include you in it as an American, agreed to that and said, sure. And you've
Are you
totally...
okay?
Yeah, so we're just making a little bit of a little adjustment with your microphone. Yeah, we just have to take the fuzzy off the microphone. It's all good. It just started happening.
Okay. Everything up until now is cool?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
It sounds good there, just a little teeny.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good to go. Thank you.
apart from the rhetoric.
Resume your rant, would you? Roger,
Well,
honestly, I have to just
I
tell
don't
you-
want to rant about
No,
anything.
okay, but
we
come
could
on.
have a quiet, gentle discussion about all this, and I would call upon lots of great Americans forward. Mearsheimer, John Mearsheimer, for instance. I don't know whether how much
mean-
of his stuff you've read
Of course,
and
I
watched.
read Walt and Mearsheimer. I read the book.
I'm not talking about the Walter Mearsheimer book. I'm talking about
Yes.
everything that John Mearsheimer has said and done since 2004, which is going back 18 years now, and he's been talking about the horrific danger of not standing by the American word in 1980.
I watched the famous Posner lecture at Yale, an hour address and an hour of Q&A that lays out this whole argument, okay? But still...
Then I don't have to tell you all this stuff, you know it already.
No, I do, but in the end...
Why doesn't the USA sue for peace now? Don't they care about Ukrainians?
But you're
Why are they prolonging this war?
why are-
It could be ended tomorrow. If Joe Biden stood up on his hind legs and said, let's put a stop to this, it would end tomorrow.
I don't know.
No more
Would
people-
it end with Putin taking the Donbass and everything he wants in eastern Ukraine? You have to
Well,
criticize
hang
Putin
on,
before we move on.
What
you
about
have
the
to-
people who live in the Donbass? Do you
I
not
have
think
relatives. I have relatives in the Donbass.
Listen, after the illegal USA-inspired coup in 2014 that put out the democratically elected government of the Ukraine, the Russians were completely clear about how they felt about that. Which
You're
was
giving them
really-
a pass. I have to say it. I mean, if I don't call you out on this, I'd be disappointed later to watch the tape.
Do you know the tape is only going to be 4 minutes long when
I
it's
hope
on
this is in it.
CNN. You'd already told me that. So this is just us having a chat over a beer. This doesn't
my
affect
God.
anything. Where's the clickbait? Come on, that's what we're talking about.
So-
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, because I know you're a serious journalist, because I've spoken to you before.
Yeah.
And you helped me out with the story in Miami when somebody in the Israeli lobby community in Miami wouldn't let a bunch of school children sing their hearts out on stage with me when I was doing
I
the
remember
show.
that night.
Yeah, so do
I
I.
remember that night.
So thank you for that.
Let me ask about
That
the
was
show.
very important. Yeah,
Let's
go
talk
on.
about the show. You got a lot of choices. How do you approach it? How do you decide what are you going to play?
Well, it's always a bit of a balancing act, because I'm realist enough to know that a lot of the people who are going to, and people don't have money to buy tickets for rock shows now. I mean, the economy, in not just in this country,
$5 grand for
all over.
Springsteen seats?
Well, I don't know about that, and I don't, but obviously the whole scalping business is, Bruce doesn't charge $5,000 for tickets, does he?
That's what some people, a handful, paid, and it was due, they say, to surge pricing, and it was the market determining that.
Oh, neoliberal capitalism, what a surprise.
The vast majority of people were not paying that.
You've shocked me now.
Tell me how you decide. What are you going to do?
I know what our cheapest seat is in the nosebleeds. It's $35. I've no idea what seats down the front are, but
I think $1.75 because I bought mine.
oh, did you?
Yeah.
Well, I hope you didn't buy them down the front because it's a hell of a long way up to look, But the show is worth every penny. This show is really, really good.
Tell me why.
Well, one of the reasons is, I wanted to answer your question about how you decide.
Yeah, please.
Well, there are a lot of people who, and that's why in the show, for instance, there's two reasons why the whole of the second half of Dark Side of the Moon is running consecutively. So it runs from Money to the end of Eclipse. And for the first time, I've put Any Colour You Like in there. Sort of because it's this really interesting chunk of musical history, that second side of that album. But also we do almost the whole of the second side of Wish You Were Here too. So there's two big chunks, and the rest of it is solo work of mine.
And Sheep.
Yeah, Sheep, sorry, yeah, you're right. Sheep ends the first half, yeah. Sheep is my, you'll see when you go to the show that I talk about Sheep in the same, I say that this is my homage to George Orwell and to Aldous Huxley, as I said before earlier in this conversation, and it is. And I'm sort of, not casual enough, or brave enough, but sort of like I am with you, open, very open enough to say that as when Huxley wrote Brave New World in 1929 and Orwell wrote 1984 and 1948, as we know, and Eisenhower was 61. Well, I wrote Sheep in 1977, and I was right to warn us about the coming dystopia when I wrote Sheep, in the same way that those great authors were right to try and warn us in their work about what can happen if we, the people, let go of the reins and let it fall into the hands of, as Eisenhower said, the Pentagon, or unfettered capitalism. Because the end result is the same, it's the same thing. All the power drifts into where the money is, and that's where the power resides in this country right now. Happily, there are countries in the world where all the power doesn't reside, but we, the people, have to stick together to try and make sure that we encourage the possibility of the people having some power.
I'm reminded that for you to go on tour is not just to play the music. Like, this is an opportunity to take a soapbox from city to city to city. And for you, I think that's part of the motivation. That's what keeps you doing it. Fair?
Do you know why I do it?
Tell me.
My mother, when I was 13 years old, and stop me if I've told you this story before, I was struggling with something or other, as 13-year-olds do. Maybe it was mortality, but anyway, it probably wasn't. And what my mother said to me was, she said, you're going to have to struggle with stuff all through your life. Difficult questions will come up. When they do, here's my advice. I want you to read everything you can about whatever it is that blah, 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 that you're thinking about, da, 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 da. All the research. If you can, look at it from all perspectives. Your advice to me about half an hour ago.
Yep.
Right, look at it. When you've done that, Roger, she said, you will have done all the heavy lifting. Everything difficult has then been done. I went, yeah, what, how, why? She said, well, the next bit's easy. And I said, well, what is the next bit? She said, do the right thing. What a great piece of advice for a kid. I would give that advice to any human being, particularly in the beginnings of their adolescence, because it's a huge lesson to learn. Well, me being on this tour is me doing the right thing. That's what I'm motivated by. Is I remember she's been dead for 15 years or so, but I'll never ever forget that.
It's a great story. Finally, from a review of your Boston show, this is from The Forward, which bills itself as Jewish, independent, and nonprofit. Quote, "So, can you fully enjoy Waters' work if you do not agree with his positions? For me," says the author, "the answer is yes. In the concert, there was a high percentage of content, musical, visual, and political, where we were all on the same page, as were, I'm guessing, the nearly 20,000 in attendance." I guess that's what it's all about, right?
I'm very glad that he or she, was it?
He.
That
Yep.
he says that, because that shows that we're making some progress, you know, and that however difficult, it's like my mum, however difficult it is, the trick is to, and this is part of my work, right? Because particularly within the context of the whole Israel-Palestine thing, right, which some Jewish people have a problem with and others don't, but we all think about whether we're Jewish or not. We always come back, or I always come back, to this tiny, tiny platform, except it isn't, which is Paris 1948 and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Either you subscribed to the 30 articles of that declaration, or you don't. You cannot cherry pick. You can't have it. You can't have it your own way. You have to say either this is about all of us, all our brothers and sisters, irrespective of ethnicity or religion or nationality, or it isn't. But you can't cherry pick. You can't say, well, we deserve human rights, but they don't. That is called being supremacist. And there's religious supremacy and you know, skin color based supremacy and political supremacy and this and that. Well, so that's a very important document, partly, as we know, written by Eleanor Roosevelt, I believe, had a huge amount to do with the wording of that declaration from 1948. I can't remember where I got started on this, but it's a very small platform. So the guy who wrote that article in the Jewish Independent whatever paper,
Yep.
Thank you, sir, for
The Forward.
being the forward, for saying that about the show, and I'm really glad to hear that you feel that way. But I will stand on that platform until the day I die, and if I live to be the age of Methuselah, I would still be standing on 1948 Paris. And I stand on that platform with all my brothers and sisters all over the world, irrespective of all the things that I've said. And there are billions of them in the South, in the poor world, in the third world, who have been trampled on for the last 500 years, since we Europeans started spreading over the world and trying to steal everything from them, which is what we've been doing, including here in the United States, I believe. This is not taught in your schools, obviously.
When you say this, then I have to say, what about our role as liberators? You of all people,
you have no role as liberators.
World War II. World War II. You
got into World War II because
Come on.
Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor. You were completely isolationist until that sad, that devastating,
I would argue
awful
we were
day
always going to get in, and that pushed us in. But thank God the United States got in, right? You lost your father in World War II. Thank God the United States.
But
right?
thank God the Russians had already won the bloody war almost by then. Don't forget that 23 million Russians died, protecting you and me from the Nazi menace.
Hey, and you would think the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and wouldn't have invaded Ukraine.
Well, you,
Fair?
with all your reading, I would suggest to you, Michael, that you go away and read a bit more and then try and figure out what the United States would do if the Chinese were putting nuclear-armed missiles into Mexico and Canada.
The Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak. Okay?
They're not encircling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China. And that's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. And if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it.
Okay, did we solve anything here today?
No, well, yeah, we did. Well, I mean, no, we didn't.
I mean,
Because you're believing your propaganda, your side's propaganda.
You're defining it as
Taiwan,
propaganda.
you can't have a conversation about human rights, and you can't have a conversation about Taiwan without actually doing the reading.
Roger, if you're having a conversation about human rights, at the top of the list of offenders are the Chinese. Why is it always the Western world?
At the top of your list.
Why is it
the
always
Chinese
the Western
didn't
world?
invade Iraq and kill 1 million people in 2003. In fact, as far as I can recall, hang on a minute, who have the Chinese invaded and murdered, slaughtered?
Their own.
Bollocks.
Okay.
That's absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense. You should go away and read, but read some proper
Hey, my
literature.
problem is I spend too much time reading your liner notes, okay? Thank you for doing this.
Thank
I appreciate
you
it.
for talking to me.
All
It's
right.
always a pleasure.
Is it? Okay. Oh, my God. You're such a troublemaker.
Please don't call me that.
What?
My God. It's a joke.
I think you give fits to the people who are with you. Those two, and Kate and Fran in particular. Oh, shit. How much longer is this going to go?
Why? Why would they give him fits? I only speak the truth. It's like, you know, I met Clinton once. Have I told you this?
No, tell me.
It was a charity do organised by John, what's his name, from VHS? John, you know who I mean anyway. And it was a charity to give classical instruments to black kids in the Bronx.
Hillary or Bill?
Bill.
Bill.
Yeah. Who's Hillary? I thought that was the guy who climbed Everest. Anyway, Sir Edmund.
Right.
Thank you. So where was I? Yeah, so I had just spent a couple of really wonderful days in a school in the Bronx with about, I don't know, 50 black kids, all with instruments and whatever, teaching them to play a version of Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2.
Nice.
It was great. It was fabulous. Anyway, we all bushed up to Lincoln Center the next day or whatever, and we performed it. Well, Clinton was there for some reason or other, and he said he wanted to meet me. So I was wheeled in, and I said, hello, and whatever. And I wasn't quite sure what else to say, but he'd just given a speech, and I'd been like 20 feet away, watching him giving a speech. And I'd never watched him in close-up and whatever, and I watched him. And he was very glib, or not quite eloquent, but sincere beyond all imagination, you know. And I thought it was quite impressive. So when I said to him, I thought, what can I say? I went, I just watched you make that speech, right? And he went, yep, you know. And I went, how do you do that? Which is a kind of double-edged kind of question like that. And he looked at me like that with his gimlets, and he went, I just tell the truth. And I went, yes! Fucking brilliant. Isn't that the perfect moment? You know?
Good stuff.
I just tell the truth.